Story 1. Not to me, but I was doing information technology work on a board member's home network. His wife was pretty insane. She told her 17-year-old very nice son, "You severely overestimate how much I care about you." The kid turned out fine after escaping his crazy mom. Story 2. It was so cruel of your mother to have you. She should have aborted you. Now you have to live a life of misery and struggle. Maybe you'll die young though. A friend's mom drunkenly talking to me at a party. I was born with no legs. It's really not a huge deal as I can get around easily off my chair and on it. I've lived very independently on my own and never had any struggles with having no legs on my own. The only struggles I run into with no legs are other people's negative opinions. Story 3. That I was the failed attempt of my mother to have a perfect-looking daughter, that my sister is the perfect one. Then she used to try to put me and my sister against each other our whole childhood. But it backfired on her when my father divorced her, and we both chose to stay with our father. Story 4. I was short-haired, tomboyish, and a punk in my teens. Boys didn't like me. My mom got drunk at a party when I was 17 and asked the men there, who were around my age, if they could have the mercy to sleep with me so I wouldn't have to die a virgin. Story 5. I am your mother. My job is to raise you, not to love you. My mother actually said this to my face when I was 12. I was sick, and she was upset that she had to take me from school. She doesn't remember saying this, but the sad part is that it's because it was just a normal Thursday for her. She said things like this regularly. Story 6. Literally 3 days ago, my girlfriend and I have been having issues. I went to her house to talk. I told her, "Remember when you came back crying on my doorstep and said that we would do whatever we need to do to work this out?" She looked at me with the coldest stare and said, "I lied." Soul-crushing. Story 7. After my girlfriend got pregnant, I dropped out of college on my way to being a lawyer and became a civil servant to establish a stable household. 8 months in, she told me that she doesn't know if I am the father. But on the bright side, I make more than my friends who became lawyers and work a fraction of the time. I am also going to be able to retire at 49, which isn't too far away. Story 8. I've been overweight for almost 20 years until during the pandemic I decided to lose weight and get fit. During that summer, I saved some money to buy new clothes because I lost 12 kilograms doing cardio every day. When I let my mom see what I was going to buy, she said, "Don't buy too many. You'll get fat again." I was too stunned to speak. I was really hurt. I thought someone believed in me besides myself. Even though now I hit the gym regularly and I have a muscular body, I still remember those words. I thought she was more supportive and proud. Story 9. You are just waiting for me to die so you can collect the life insurance. Said by my wife while nearing the end of her terminal fight with cancer. I do not hold any grudge about it, as I know she was going through a lot and was feeling really insecure about dying and thinking that I would be quick to move on. Losing her was still the worst day of my life, so I guess the joke is on her. Story 10. My mom told me I had no personality. I do, of course, but due to me being more quiet or reserved, that equals no personality to her. Unfortunately, it is something that lingers in my mind when I am interacting with people. Parents, please be mindful of how you speak with your children. Story 11. Why do you think I will cry over you? I have not cried since I cried for her. My ex, when we had been dating for 1.5 years. He was referring to his ex, who he had dated for 2 months. Story 12. I dated the love of my life for just over 2.5 years, when she dumped me. That hurt, but not as much as when she sent me an invitation to her wedding the following month. I had to totally change my life to get back on an even keel. Story 13. My sister used me as an example to her kids of why they should study harder at school while we were all sitting around the same table. For clarity, it was, "Your uncle didn't study, and look how he ended up." Up until then, I'd thought while I wasn't setting the world on fire, I was doing okay, paying my bills. That certainly brought me down a peg or two. She's apologized, and I told her not to worry about it. But she said what she said. Story 14. Thank you for the support. Enjoy your new family. Thanks, Dad. Extra bonus. This was while planning to visit him for Christmas because I asked if he was sure he wanted to get back with the ex he dumped for using hard drugs at his house without his knowledge. The new family was my mom and his other children. Story 15. I was an overweight kid who generally wore sweatpants and hoodies to hide my body as much as possible. One year I made a dress in sewing class in middle school. It was long, flowing, and in no way form-fitting. I was so proud of it. I took it home and tried it on for my mom. She looked me up and down, shrugged and said, "It's nice, but it shouldn't show all your rolls." Slaughtered me. Never put it on again. Story 16. My annoyed youngest sister was ranting at my mother, saying about me, "And that lazy person." It was me some 30 years ago who looked after my mother and older sister and her when my parents got separated due to family issues. In my 20s, I had to find a job I did not like so they could have a roof over their heads and food on the table. Story 17. During a pregnancy scare at 18, my mom asked why I didn't have the decency to take care of it without her having to know, like she had done when she was 17. During our last conversation, she told me everything that had gone wrong in her adult life was because she had me. Story 18. I've been told to kill myself a few times in my life, but the worst one was a man I thought loved me, who sat me down very seriously to tell me why I should kill myself and listed exactly how everyone in my life would either benefit or not even notice. He almost got me with that one. Story 19. A few from my mom. The highlights are, no one will ever love you. You will be nothing in life. I hope you and your brother die. May God give you what you deserve. I curse you. Story 20. You know nothing. My dad, after a few beers when I was 12, told him about recording my music. I had been recording music for a few years then, and I was telling him enthusiastically and proudly about it. I stood up, went to my room, and cried. My mom saw this happen and yelled at my dad. Funny enough, I record music for a living now. So, forget you, Dad. Story 21. I was a dork in middle school, bullied and ostracized, and I remember trying to overcompensate on the school bus by being loud and trying to be funny. This kid, who had kept his mouth shut until now, finally blurted out, "Oh my God, you're not funny or cool. Stop trying." I think stuff like that may have stuck with me more than I'd care to admit. Story 22. I hope you die of cancer, just like your dad. 8 months after my dad died of cancer, my belongings were on the lawn. This was said to me by my ex-fiance's best friend after I called off the engagement because of my ex's crippling gambling addiction. Jennifer, I hope you've had a miserable life in Crossfield, Alberta. You horrific, sour, evil, pus-filled bag of hatred. I hope Danny left you on the side of a highway and you've been searching for your soul ever since. I despise you. Story 23. My mom said the only reason I was back to take care of her while she had cancer was because I was a failure at everything else in life and wanted to pretend I was actually a good person. She committed suicide 2 months later. Story 24. Decades ago, a coworker was asked to interview a job candidate but for some reason couldn't. So he asked me to do it instead, which I did. I found out later that our boss scolded him because he believed that the candidate would lose interest in the job after being exposed to my personality and unwillingness to have me as a coworker. In more recent years, numerous bosses have wanted me to conduct interviews. Story 25. Every time I ate food, put food on my plate, got a snack, and so on, my dad would make the most horrendous pig squeal that still haunts me to this day. This started around my preteen years and ended when I cut him out in my 30s. He especially loved doing this at parties, restaurants, and similar places. It was one of many things I worked on in therapy for years. I still struggle to eat in front of people sometimes. One time I was so triggered by a pig toy someone got my kid that I got rid of it and had a meltdown. I still feel guilty about the toy, but my dad doesn't feel guilty for the public humiliation or disordered eating. He'd say I can't take a joke. Laugh out loud. Story 26. Being called an ungrateful person by my mother when I was in my teens was pretty hurtful at the time. I was a really good kid and an excellent student, so it made very little sense back then. Story 27. I've struggled with weight and self-esteem my entire life. About 10 years ago, I hit my goal weight and was in the best shape of my life. My fiancé told me I was unattractive because he could see my spine. That statement stuck with me. Story 28. You will probably be abusive if you ever get a partner. From a friend who also told me one time while drunk that once a girl actually had interest in me, but he then persuaded her to be with him. Story 29. Being told, yelled at, by my student advisor in my 5th year of college back in 2016 that I am a terrible student who won't amount to anything. This comes after being told by my parents on 2 different occasions, once right after high school graduation in 2011, and once after I failed a semester in my 3rd year, that if I took a break to figure out what I want to do for a job, I'd be stuck doing a crappy job with a lower quality of life. A small amount of background. Throughout middle and high school, I thought I wanted to be a civil engineer, but after graduation, I started to have my doubts about that. I struggled with confidence a bit back then, so I kept following the same path, following my parents' advice. After year 3, I switched to a math emphasis since I liked math, but I still struggled, and after being told that by my advisor for flunking again in the 5th year, I ended it. No sense dropping more and more money if it's not working out, and I really should have been more assertive and stopped sooner. Fast forwarding to now, I have a job at a rapidly growing company that I love with good benefits and income, and I have been working to better myself since that time. I am significantly happier compared to that time in college. My parents and family are also happy seeing my progress, which is a good feeling. Story 30. Where would you even go if you left? Your family rightfully hates you. No one could love you. You couldn't even get suicide right. I was in the hospital recovering and told him I wanted a divorce. Story 31. My mom told me I was emotionally torturing her when I was 15 because I asked her to turn the music up in the car. She broke into a rage fit, and I realized how much she hated me. Story 32. My brother, who is in middle school, told me that I was too ugly to lose my virginity. I want to say I was a senior in high school, and it happened in front of the whole family at Christmas. Story 33. I was walking down a quiet street I was using as a shortcut. Suddenly I hear, "You are a horrible person," from above. It was a kid. Nobody else around. They were looking down at me and said that. That kid is probably in college now, but I will never forget it. Story 34. He would never do that to a girl. I do not believe you. His brother's boyfriend and also my best friend of over 10 years. He did, in fact, do it to me and to his ex. Story 35. I came out to my dad, and he never spoke another word to me or my twin, who took my side. Now, we don't have a dad. He threw away 18 years like nothing. Story 36. After my mom let loose her fury on me and whipped me about 20 times with a wooden spoon, she growled at me. That felt good. I was 10 and had accidentally turned on the washing machine by climbing on it to look out the window and wave at my dad, who was outside doing yard work. Story 37. Why would I care about someone who gets mad at me every 3 weeks? And along the lines of, I was just desperate, to a question about why he gave me a second chance. I was guilty because I stood up for myself, and it didn't help that he held it above my head. Fun fact, I wasn't getting mad. I wanted to communicate the problem that he had caused. So we didn't have a rift between us. Let's just say that rift got bigger to the point I cut him off, and I haven't turned back. Story 38. I'm glad your mom isn't alive to see you now. Dad, I was in high school. I didn't do drugs or alcohol, no degenerate behavior on my part. We were just having an argument, and he strives to cut to the bone. It wasn't really hurtful, per se. I was effectively immune to everything that came out of his mouth by this point in my life. If some drunk person constantly says over-the-top gross things to you, you really just stop caring about anything they say. Story 39. I used to self-harm and have many prominent scars on my thighs because of it. It got really bad when I was 17 to 18. One day, completely unprompted, my twin sister looked at me and said, "You know, now you've made yourself uglier and no one will ever love you." Joke's on her. She can't have a healthy, stable relationship to save her life. Meanwhile, I've been dating my boyfriend now for 9.5 years, and he doesn't think my scars are ugly. Story 40. A Sunday school teacher who was a friend of the family told my younger sister and me that even though my mom's death was ruled an accidental suicide, she was still going to hell. My dad pulled us out of there after thoroughly confronting her and the pastor. Story 41. A 12-year-old classmate told me that I am ugly. The students in my school were photographed for the annual yearbook, and we were given the option to buy copies of our photograph. I bought copies of my photograph. The photographs were delivered in a window envelope with my photograph clearly visible. The teacher held up the envelope containing my photo for all of my classmates to see. A classmate shouted, "He's ugly." All of my classmates laughed in agreement. Story 42. It would be like picking a bingo ball out of a gigantic and fully stocked bingo wheel. One of the first things that comes to mind is my mom not taking me seriously when I told her my boyfriend was sexually assaulting me. She basically told me to stop exaggerating, suck it up, and be glad I had a boyfriend. Thanks, mother. Story 43. I'm self-conscious about my looks, so as a teenager I laughed and smiled awkwardly. My sister said to me, "You finally look cute." I stopped trying to smile for a long time. Story 44. My dad called me a derogatory term. I don't think I'd heard him say it before, or at least not often. My mother more than once told me she loved me but didn't like me, as if that made it any better. Not as extreme as some of the other comments here, but I know I'll never say those things to my child.